4, 3, 2. Number 3, or number 4 podcast, Itai and the Rabbi.
Yeah.
We're going to start off this morning with the discussion about Mike Tyson.
What a great subject to start with, huh?
Yeah.
I just saw him co-hosting a podcast interviewing David Benavidez. I'll tell you exactly why it's interesting to me. It should be interesting to you. I haven't watched all the interview, I got to admit. It's a bit more than 1 hour long, but Benavidez is fighting next week. Caleb Plant, a fight in 168 pounds, super middleweight. Very interesting fighter, young guy, aggressive, vicious in the ring, volume punching, and he's fighting. Caleb Plant is a better boxer, you know, as it comes to actually pure boxing, more accurate and movement.
So Mike Tyson was interviewing him.
Yes, Mike Tyson was co-hosting. There is a podcast, I think, that Mike Tyson is participating.
I think he does it himself.
Yes.
It's his podcast.
Yeah.
No?
Yes, exactly. There was another guy that I think knew Benavidez before. Excellent. Listen. I like David Benavidez. He's a very dynamic fighter. You should watch him. He's coming there and he's knocking out people, and he's doing it with volume punches, and he's throwing from different angles, and he just goes for it. He's very natural and very aggressive in the ring. You know,
When is the fight?
25th
Of March.
Yes. So it's next week, right? Next week, and it should be a good fight. Caleb Plant, you know, stylistically speaking, they are coming from different corners of different corners of the ring, pun intended, but also stylistically speaking, they are very different to each other, and there is a lot of animosity, or at least it seems like. I don't think it's just hype. I think that there is some animosity between the parties participating.
But that's always with boxing. The way boxing always works, you've got to hype up to create this facade, to create this energy build-up. You know, and then after the fight, except for a few fights that I've watched, it usually ends off pretty, civil. But before the fight is absolutely uncivil.
They respect each other most times. Yes, I'll tell you what.
I think if you can go in a round with somebody,
yes,
and have a punch up, and the guy, and you understand each one is giving their energy, and you start to respect the other guy. I mean, maybe if you go in and knock him out within 10 seconds, I'm not sure if there's respect, but if the other party holds up, holds up with you, and it's a continue, then respect builds as the fight. And it's very emotional fighting.
It is very
emotional. I know it's a physical act of punching somebody in the face, but it is very emotional.
I think you're absolutely right. Look, you get, I think, connected and related. Someone, especially if you fight, as you said, a longer fight, dramatic fight, you're going to be connected for life. I want to tell you a few things you made me think about. First, let's go back. Okay, 2 subjects were very interesting here. I think that hyping a fight and talking trash talk, and all this animosity between the fighters in press conferences, which is
part of the show.
It's part of the show, but it started with Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was the master of many things, and that was one of his things that he actually popularized. He took it from a wrestler. He saw a wrestler doing it, and he really liked the style. So he said, I want to be like that. I want to start talking trash and upset my opponents and psychologically wind them up. And it actually ended up as something that sold a lot of tickets. It made the public very interested. But before that, it was not really like that. I watched an interview of Rocky Marciano. We are talking now really serious greats. Muhammad Ali was great as well, I'm not saying, but and Ezra Charles. Let me tell you, they fought each other, 2 fights, 2 of the best fights that were ever recorded. You can film, you can see it. I'm going to send you the links after that. And they had two fights because it was very close. And Marciano and Ezra Charles had great respect to each other. No trash talk. You could see them talking to each other with immense respect. Rocky Marciano had a Jewish trainer by the name of Charlie Goldman. Amazing guy. And Ezra Charles was actually training also with a Jewish man by the name of Ray Arcel. They call him the teacher of the teachers. He is the guy who taught all the great teachers that came after him, because Arcel was born 1 year before the turn of the century. He was born in 1899. Mm-hmm. So he belongs to that generation. And he went through all the great fighters. So you understand, but this type of trash talk didn't really exist until Ali. I think that Tony Galanto, two-tone Tony, was a fat guy, but he was really experienced. He fought Joe Louis. And he spoke back to Joe Louis. And Joe Louis was shocked that something like that happened. He was not used to that. He said, why this guy is talking to me like that, you know? Back then, it was not typical. So that's one thing. And another thing that I wanted to say, I just forgot. Schmeling and Louis. You watched?
I watched the fight, yeah.
Max, you know that after that fight, you know, they say Max Schmeling never admitted it, but he became a very successful man. Unfortunately, Joe Louis was not. They say that he paid for the funeral of Joe Louis.
Serious?
Yeah, he never admitted it. But this is how connected, as you say correctly, these people were because of the fight. And you remember how serious that fight was.
Yeah. Watching the fight, it was an intense battle.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
It was, yeah.
So, yeah, so if you want, I mean, I don't know, watching it in real time, it's a bit complicated. I never stay too late, but because it's going to be in the United States. But next week, it's Benavidez versus Plant.
Who's favorite to win? What's it, featherweight? What is it?
No, 168. I told you, super
middleweight.
big guys. Benavidez is very tall. Benavidez is the favorite. I think Plant comes in as an underdog. Let's see what will happen. I told you.
When you were watching this interview on Mike Tyson's podcast?
Okay, yes.
And what was he saying?
I haven't watched all of it, like I told you. I didn't have time for it, but it's interesting. Mike Tyson is one of the most intelligent people in boxing. I admire his intelligence. I feel sorry that it was so difficult for him to express himself because his personality, because he's such a troubled person. And I can relate to it, not because I got the same issues of Mike Tyson, but I can relate to how difficult it is sometimes when you got so much on your mind. But you cannot express it the way you want. And people look at him, I think for the mainstream, a lot of people look at him as some sort of such a character, grotesque, I don't know, something that they don't really understand. But he's incredible. You know, I watched someone analyze a chess game that he played between him and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, yeah? He played chess against Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yeah. Now, Schwarzenegger, yeah, that's it. You see, so he played against Schwarzenegger. And actually, Schwarzenegger is a good chess player. My brother sent me a game that he played against, I don't remember who, but Schwarzenegger won and he played against a good opponent. So Schwarzenegger had chops when it comes to chess, but Mike Tyson beat him up and he took the blacks. So Schwarzenegger was opening, I think, what was it, a French defense? I'm not sure about it, I need to go back to it. But I believe that it started with the E4 and then the response to that was E6. I'm not sure, but you have to ask. Your genius son is the next Bobby Fischer. But very good. Tyson really used intelligence, deception, originality. The man is a genius.
And do you think he had any chess training before? Or do you think it was like, let's play chess?
No.
Because knowing Mike Tyson, he probably studied the game of chess. Because I've heard a lot of stuff where he's studied fight, he's studied boxing. He's definitely somebody that's not, if he's got an opinion or going to say something or do something, he's studied it. And he can even go for the drugs that he takes. I'm sure it's nothing he does is just, let me just do it.
Very educated man. You're so right about it. This is what I was talking a bit before. This is why I'm happy that you started recording this podcast, because I was already talked about it even before we started, that Jimmy Jacobs was one of the people who helped Mike Tyson growing up as some sort of he was a manager, I believe, but also an advisor. And Jimmy Jacobs was a Jewish handball player. But you know this game in America, they play with their hands like that. They say, I'm not an expert on this game, so I cannot give you my opinion, that he was the greatest in history.
Who?
Jimmy Jacobs.
Jimmy at handball.
He was the greatest in history. So he was an incredible athlete, naturally gifted athlete.
So how did he move to boxing?
That's a very interesting story. So most of the films from the old school, from the pioneers of boxing, when film was already available, that you see on YouTube, is the contribution of Jimmy Jacobs. He is the most important film collector in the history of the sport. He made it his mission in life to travel the world and find every bit of fight film that he could in order to build an archive. I read somewhere that
An archive showing what? Just
Fighting.
boxing film or
Boxing.
strategy or
no boxing films of all the greats. Let me give you an example. Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion of the world, when he fought Tommy Burns and beat him for the title, the crowd was so upset about it because, like we spoke about it, I think, in the podcast before, a black man was not supposed to take the heavyweight title. So they stopped the filming in the middle. The fight is lost forever because they could not allow it.
because of racism.
Yeah, they could not allow the beating to be shown. Understand? That's it. They saw that Tommy Burns is lost. So they said, cut the film. But Jimmy Jacobs, what he did was traveling the world in order to find every bit of fight film that he could. Apparently, I read somewhere that ESPN, ESPN, I think paid something like $100 million to buy this archive.
Wow.
Jimmy Jacobs is no longer alive, unfortunately, but he was a genius. He was also a comic strip collector, one of the greatest in the world. But when it comes to fight films, this is the man that we should be thankful when we want to watch the old fighters. So the reason why he turned, as you said, to boxing is because Kaz D'Amato, do you know the name?
Yeah.
Do you know? Kaz D'Amato, who took Mike Tyson from the place where he was, trained him, coached him, taught him, adopted him legally as well.
He didn't. Mike Tyson never had a father, or he had a father, but he just didn't. I can't remember.
I think his father was not present in his life. That's what I remember. But Kaz D'Amato became his legal guardian, I would call it.
Yeah, and if you listen to me, Mike Tyson, by the way, speaks about him, how he was a man who insisted on discipline.
Oh wow!
Discipline
what
was
a man.
by him. It's better to be disciplined and lose than be undisciplined and win.
You listen. Kaz D'Amato is one of the most colorful and unusual characters. Boxing is full with them. By the way, just
But it's funny because when I hear Mike Tyson speak about him, I'm not sure. Maybe there is. Maybe he might say it, but he doesn't. I don't know if he speaks about him more. I don't know if there's any love there, as opposed to reverence.
Interesting. You know what? It's something that I was thinking a lot about. What was the nature of the relationships between them? Because Kaz D'Amato, as you say, from what I read, and I read quite a bit of what he had to say, and I watched him on interviews as well. He was a very tough guy and a very tunnel visioned when it comes to his. He was probably the greatest philosopher of fighting when it comes to in boxing. All these old school trainers, Charlie Goldman, Angelo Dundee, Eddie Fudge, all of them had great philosophy about what they did, and they all were psychologists and they were father figures as well to their fighters. All these things together, But something about Kaz D'Amato, he knew how to express himself so well. So, and he talked so much. He really cared about the philosophical side of things and psychological side of it. So maybe you're probably right about it. It's very difficult to know. Look, he helped Mike Tyson and he believed in him. So
He was right to believe he became the heavyweight champion of the world.
This is one thing about Kaz D'Amato. Again, I got to come back to it because I read an interview with him from Sports Illustrated somewhere in the 60s, I believe it was made. And this guy had, I will not say prophetic, but he had an incredible ability to predict a fight. I mean, a lot of people, you would say, okay, they got a lot of knowledge. So especially a guy like that who had world champions already, because Mike is not the first one. Yeah, he had Floyd Patterson before him, heavyweight champion of the world, was the youngest. Then Mike Tyson took the youngest title. And he had Jose Torres, light heavyweight champion of the world. But he could actually tell you how a fight is going to end up. He was so good at analyzing a fight. And it's not easy, even when you are very good. Unless it's a cherry picking, unless you take someone that you know that is not supposed to win. But he really could take a fight between, and he told Mike Tyson, son, you're going to be the champion, the heavyweight champion of the world. It's incredible.
It is.
That you say something like that. Yes, but come back. So what did you say? You said something. So we spoke about Jimmy Jacobs.
Yeah.
So this is about the intelligence of Tyson, just how educated he is. The Jimmy Jacobs, who was himself obsessed with collecting things. He said in an interview that when Mike Tyson was young back then, not even 20, I think, he said, Mike Tyson, if I'll tell him that I found a book about John L. Sullivan, the first heavyweight champion of the world under the gloved era, the Queensberry rules. He said, if I'll tell him that I found a book about him, he will take a flight to another state to buy
To
it.
buy the book. Makes sense. I think that just listening to him, it's very interesting. There's something different between being educated and being intelligent.
Of course.
You can be educated without being intelligent.
Exactly. And you can be intelligent but not educated.
Correct.
It happens a lot.
Correct. But I think, even though he might sound a bit stupid, I mean, the way he speaks, he's very intelligent.
Oh my God.
He's an intelligent person.
Is
When he gets to I've listened to him on a few points, on a few things that he discussed outside of boxing and within boxing and everything, and I must say, the way that he worked, he must have worked them out based on the information that he had, because that's the sign of intelligence. The sign of intelligence is not regurgitating information. That's education. That's educated. Signs of intelligence is when you can take all this and create a new thought, a pinpointing thought and a thought that makes sense and is intelligent, which is logical. And I think that's what he does. I've seen a lot of points of Mike Tyson, which is incredible because people always brush him off as, it's just Mike Tyson. What does he know?
Yeah,
he knows how to hit somebody.
He's very, 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 probably one of the most misunderstood characters in the history of boxing, maybe sports. But that's the thing. He of course, he contributed to that image. It's not like he did not, but at the same time, it's a shame because he's so much more. I heard him. He kind of defends himself about it. Is because I grew up in, I don't know what they call it, the projects there, whatever they call it over there. Yeah, it is.
I grew up in this environment which kind of was heading me to a certain path.
It's true,
and
as
it
well.
was the way I speak. All my actions were based on where I was brought up. Besides for Cousin, there was another guy who he said that kind of not pulled him out, but redirected.
Teddy Atlas, maybe. Teddy Atlas had a serious history with that. Teddy Atlas was an assistant of he's a Jewish guy, by the way, Teddy Atlas. He's one of these guys, I think, that came from a family that was pretty well off, and then he went astray a bit, and then boxing helped him as well, put him back on the main road. Teddy Atlas gave a great monologue about Mike Tyson, interviewed by Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan just allowed him to speak.
Who, Mike or Ted?
Teddy Atlas. And he spoke about Mike Tyson. Look, again, when I said what I said, yes, Mike Tyson contributed to the image, but at the same time, I absolutely agree with you. He came from a very difficult place. And you remember, I think, that I mentioned the book that Jose Torres, who was a champion of Kaz D'Amato before Mike Tyson became a champion, wrote. Then Torres left boxing and became a writer, and a good writer as well. And he wrote about it, and he said that a Jewish man who survived the Holocaust, remember the anecdote, told him that he thinks that the projects are like concentration camps. So it's a very serious statement. I mean, you can agree with that or not. Jose Torres pointed it, I think, as a material for us to think about, not necessarily taking a stance about it. He's not necessarily agreeing with the guy or disagreeing with the guy. He just wanted to point it.
No, I understand. Listen, I have this person who injured himself, just because you mentioned it.
Please, no, okay.
I had this person who he injured himself, and he feels very guilty that he's lost his faith but he's now challenging God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he's a religious man.
He's a religious man, but remember, he lost his leg. Not he lost his leg, got a leg, but he broke his leg. All the things that keeps his spirit up, he can't do anymore. From cold water dipping to walking the dog for 45 minutes. Of course, I remember.
I met him, tall guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
For 45 minutes.
He looks a strong man.
You understand? He had all these different activities which suddenly were taken away from him, within 2 seconds. And he's living with a lot of this emotional pain. But he feels guilty because, if he thinks about where his father, who came out of Auschwitz, he's saying, like, my pain is nothing compared to them. I feel guilty of having this pain, having this questioning in God, and all I did was break my leg. And I think the same thing you can say about these projects, comparing them to concentration camps. The question is like this.
That's from the book of Jose Torres.
Yeah, the book. The trauma that this guy's going through, the fact that he broke his leg, is in definitely the same realm as the trauma, just on a different level as being in a concentration camp. It's just on a heightened level. The trauma is the same. It's not something that's a foreign. It's not like a foreign feeling. It's the same feeling. It's just the degrees. And so when he compares it to a concentration camp, I can actually, why not? Why is that so controversial? It's controversial, people could say, because, the concentration people were dying in that. But I think that on a certain level, it's in the same framework. It might not. It might be, if it was on a graph, let's say the concentration camps at the top, this is more closer to the bottom, but it's still on the graph. It has a place on the graph. And because it has a place on the graph, then why not use it?
Look, I don't disagree. I'm thinking about it. I'm very interested. There are arguments for that and against it. I'm philosophically trying to negotiate the idea in my mind. Keep in mind, half of my family, from my father's side, survived the Holocaust. So I absolutely can relate to that, and also relate to what your friend is going through. You know, I'll tell you something about myself. You might find it, maybe you find it strange, but it's very much. But now that you say it, I feel very not comfortable necessarily, but I feel that there is more people who think like me. Sometimes when I feel that I need to go to the doctor, I need to ask for some help for medical issues that I have to deal with, unfortunately, I say to myself, why the doctor even helps me? If he helps me. Let's say that he helps me, okay? I'm not a big fan of the doctors, but I'm just saying, if he helps me. My grandfather, when he was in the Holocaust, he was a dead man walking. So how can it be that he was a great man, had to fight for his life every day, and today someone wants to help me? I almost feel guilty if I need help.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I do. It sounds unbelievable, but I realize that I feel guilty.
But where did that trauma come from?
Because I'm very connected with the experience of the Holocaust, even though I, of course, never lived to be in the Holocaust.
Is that because your grandfather told you all about it? Was it something that your parents used to say, like, get over it, or, look what granddad went through, what Zayda went through, whatever you call Sabba.
Say Zayda, you can, yeah, of course.
I'm saying, look at, why are you making this a big deal?
Because I'll tell you a few reasons. First, I believe in epigenetics. I think that the trauma of your ancestors moves to you genetically. I don't think it's a code that is going to be written, printed in the DNA. And it's going to pass to you. So I think it lives inside me. And
so you tell it 1 second. So if you have a life experience, that then gets genetically
passed to the exactly. And
what's it called?
Epigenetics. The science of, but I'm not an expert on that. Often I like saying I'm not an expert, because sometimes when I speak about subjects, I like knowing them that well that I feel comfortable. But I'm just telling you, as a concept, I believe that whatever happens to your ancestors, and especially if it's a traumatic event or very important central event in their life, it will move to you. They will pass it genetically. That's one thing. The second thing is that, of course, I've heard the stories. Not so much from my grandfather, because unfortunately he passed away when I was very young. When the Holocaust happened, he was already an adult. He already had a family that he lost in the Holocaust, kids. So my father told me some of the stories. So I remember them. And also, I educated myself with the subject, and it became very close to me. I think there is not one day passing without me thinking about it. Even yesterday, I found myself watching a film. I'm not doing a lot of it, but a documentary that was color restored about the invasion, capturing Berlin by the Red Army.
The Russians.
Yeah, my grandfather was part of that force, by the way, under Marshal Zhukov. But I don't know enough details to tell you about it, but I understand that he was. But again, coming back to it, I feel a lot of times this man was supposed to be dead. I don't, this is a lot of hashgacha. This is God. It's amazing how you actually survived something like that. You survived it. Millions of others did not. And he was in the battlefield constantly. And very, if you call someone a boxer, let's say Caleb Plant is going as an underdog to the fight against Benavidez, from what I understand, you're talking about major underdog. You are fighting against the most
survival.
Exactly. You are fighting.
The whole world's against you.
Against the most efficient army, killing machine that doesn't take any prisoners. If you're a Jew, no prisoners are to be taken. So you are fighting for your life every day. So I ask myself, how can it be that someone wants to help me get better? It doesn't make sense in my mind.
It's incredible. It's funny how I don't have those thoughts at all.
Because you didn't, your family didn't go to the Holocaust, right? Or did
Well, not my immediate. Well, my grandparents.
they left
all,
what?
No, to 1920s Lithuania.
Oh, okay. So they left before.
But all their family was gone.
Okay, no.
But it's so detached from me. I don't have a person in my family where I can point to and say, "Oh, they came out the Holocaust." I have no one like that. Because in Lithuania they had the Holocaust in the 1920s. If that makes sense. Their systematic destruction started then, and that's why they all left and they came to South Africa.
I can absolutely understand it because let's take someone like my mother who didn't come from that background. She's Iraqi Kurdish Jew, and you can see that she doesn't understand it, even though she went through a lot of trauma growing up in Israel. That's a different type of trauma, but that I can see on her. But when it comes to the Holocaust, speaking about it, she doesn't. She cannot relate to it. She understands it, like any other human being.
Yeah, exactly.
But she cannot relate to it. It's very difficult for me to explain it to her.
I know, it's so funny because I in a way, I see it, which maybe is unfair, because I haven't met Holocaust survivors, but I see it now, the Holocaust, as maybe like the Spanish Inquisition, or maybe like, it's like so far away from me, even though
it's very close to me, by the way. Okay.
I know, but I'm just so, it's like, it hardly dictates my actions. Does that make sense? It doesn't dictate my actions anymore. Like, also when a lot of, even now when I just hear, and I hear certain rabbis bring up the Holocaust as a story for the community, I feel in my thing, they're just trying to push the emotional button,
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to do, because to give a good speech, you've got to mention, Holocaust. Now, I'm not saying that's what I feel, but in a way, I was like, I don't want to hear about it anymore, in a way. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me, but I'm definitely not like you. I think I understand that it has been used. It's still being used for certain reasons of capturing the attention of people, I think, or emotional reasons, maybe. I don't know. But I watched some rabbis giving incredible lectures. I'm not saying you say that cannot happen, but I watched some really incredible lectures about the Holocaust, which for me opened the gate to understand the Holocaust better. Because if you follow the mainstream narrative, you'll find yourself stuck under a pile of lies, in my opinion.
I'm not saying to forget it.
No, I didn't say that.
I never said forget it.
No.
I'm just saying is that I've heard it too much. My whole life. Everything I did was, the Holocaust. I mean, everything was about, it was like the foundation of everything was the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Now we're coming out the ash pit. Now, the facts are we became a strong nation. The fact is 6 million did die. The fact that terrible things that we should learn, we shouldn't allow this to happen again at such a scale, even though we do anyway. No, I'm just saying is that for me personally, I want to, like, in a way, it's going to sound a bit harsh, but move on. You know what I mean? Move on. It's a I want good new anti-Semitism, if you know what I mean.
You're a genius. You're very funny. Good new anti-Semitism. You got a lot of it. It's okay. Don't worry about it. But for me, it's no. I like it, as you said. For me, it's very important. It's not just the importance. I don't necessarily even think about it. The general importance for people to know about it. For me, it's part of my life. It's a very central theme in my life. It's not that I constantly think about it, but I think about it a lot. I think about it every day, and I think that it taught me a lot about what is happening today, to understand reality better, to be sharper. I think it sharpens you. I'm not saying that I'm not, you see, for me, my perspective about it, it's not that I'm sitting, when I think about it, it's not that I'm sitting and thinking, oh, how miserable I am, how sad I am, how this. It's not like that. It's more like trying to understand something that is so difficult to understand.
Yeah, I understand. I can relate slightly. I remember when I was in South Africa, living in South Africa, we had to adapt to the scenario, the surroundings we were in. I remember we used to come home, we had to open the gate, we couldn't drive into the driveway until we've checked all the spots and then drive in. There was many different things you had to take precautions, which was, if you were going to genetically put into me, and how to look at things. And, when you walk down the street, you always have to think, okay, you have to be one step ahead of everybody else. You have to be very, very cautious.
In Israel as well, by the way.
Yeah, and that was the life in South Africa, which that's why maybe I came here to London and I decided, here I don't have that. I had to deprogram myself in a way.
Me as well.
With that type of lifestyle, constantly being the necessity of being one step ahead. Because once you're not one step ahead, you're in for trouble. And that's what I got from South Africa. More than maybe that's what you kind of relating to.
I look, growing up in Israel, you get this as well. You become like that also. For me, going to one of the shops here, realizing that there is no security that they're doing with a metal detector is strange. People look at it. If you put one of these guys in the entry to one of the, let's say, Tesco, people will get completely shocked seeing something like that.
Yeah, and also in the bus stations.
Yeah, exactly. Everywhere. I remember for me, growing in a suburb, the most entertaining place is the big shopping center.
The Kenyans.
Yeah, the Kenyans. Yeah. You go there, Kenyan, we got the Kenyan. Yeah. It's so funny. It's a legendary place. It's
legendary. All the teenagers go. I remember we were just together.
Out of time and space. Seriously, this is sci-fi. What is going on?
The majority of the time, we ended up eating at Burger King or McDonald's.
Oh, Burger King. I still remember that.
You know what I mean? Because that's what.
Burger King, yeah. I was thinking about Burger Ranch.
Burger Ranch, Burger Ranch. Yeah. Whatever it's called, I can't remember.
Yeah. But that was a place that I used to spend a lot of time for me, just going, reading some books or trying to see people and entertaining myself, because there is no other form of entertainment if you want to see people. So, but entering the place, you have to go through a metal detector, and you're young as well. And it's strange to see, but it's your reality.
Yeah.
This is also why I told people here they have to be very careful, because it's very easy to get used to certain routines that you should not get used to. Because what I'm trying to say is...
But let's go back a bit. When did you... Because obviously growing up in Israel, this was the norm.
Yes.
Being in So when did you realize this is not normal? When you came here? Or was whilst you
it took me. Even when I came here, I didn't think about it this way. But when I started again, like I told you, realizing, getting more, building more consciousness of reality, society, and what is happening in the world, just understanding the reasons behind, or at least what I think are the reasons for the certain behaviors or certain structures, certain routines that we adopted or that were forced upon us, if you want. So then I realized that it's very unusual, because at the beginning...
But wait, in Israel?
No. Here. It took me some time as well. I remember going on the trains and at the beginning and looking at people, and let's just say that there is a bag somewhere. In Israel, it's immediately can be a bomb. Chavetz Chashud, yes.
It's a suspicious
object, whatever you want to call it. I don't think there is even, you can translate it pretty easily, but I think that there is no even, the translation itself make me feel uncomfortable, because I think to myself, my God, how can you even explain it to people? There is no, I looked at the people around me, in the train, and they seem like unaware, and I'm very aware. I think about it this way.
It's funny because I'm also aware of it when I'm on the trains, but I'm also aware of it.
Yeah, but I don't think much about it anymore. But it's not because I became desensitized. I just don't think about it the way I used.
But that's because our reality is that the whatever terrorism happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not limited just to.
Yeah, but it's not the same.
No, it's not.
Not because it's not on. It can go. You remember in Europe we had a lot of terror attacks going on a few years ago. So it's not that Europe is immune to it, and very serious. Especially, you remember France, what was it? What was the name of the place? Bataclan, what was the theater? A few years, it doesn't matter, there have been a lot of them. And so you still have to be aware of it. But I just think that growing up in Israel, like I told you, the thing that bothers me even more is the idea that you have to go to a shopping center and then you have to go to a metal detector. It's not such
and also the bus station.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't visited for many years now. But if you have to go through that, and I think also, what would have happened if you put one of these metal detectors guys in entering shops here? People would be very, very worried about it, but they will get used to it because they get used to it.
Well, and you'll have arguments on each side. Why it's good to have, why it isn't good to have.
But you can you see, with the lockdown, I'm not saying that everyone accepted it. Apparently, there are more than few people who actually said no. We don't like it. We don't agree with that. Even though they were pushed by the media to the left field, to the sides, become a fringe. There's some lunatics into conspiracy theories. Apparently, not apparently, I know it. There are more than few people who are not like that, not the type, and they don't agree with what happened. But you could see how easy it was to convince people that they have to change their life so radically because they have to protect the people around them and themselves. It was very easy. So that's what I said to people, look, you can get used to things that you should not get used to.
Yeah. Yeah, but the lockdown, well, if I ask you, which camp were you? Not to lockdown or to lockdown?
Not to lockdown. I was definitely not to lockdown.
Even right at the beginning?
Look, at the beginning I was suspicious, of course. Not suspicious. I was cautious, and I was critically thinking, like everything else I do. I was critically thinking the situation. I remember at the very beginning, I was first following a bit what was going on in China, and then
all the images were coming out of China, people dying and filling up the hospitals. They had to build a whole new
exactly.
hospital.
So I
what did you expect?
I treated it with both suspicion and critical thinking. Both.
You're very lucky because I didn't.
Yes. So, but I remember at the beginning when it came here. So I used to go to Tesco where I lived. There was a Tesco near me, and back then I woke up. I used to wake up very early, 6 o'clock in the morning, every day. Not because of anything, just that's where I used to go to sleep much earlier. So Tesco was opening at 7, I think. Mm-hmm. So I would already going pretty early for the queues because I realized that people are going to queue. I put the mask. I kept the things at the very beginning, very, very beginning.
You bought toilet paper?
No, oh my God, man. Oh my God, I'm not a sheep. No, you remember we spoke about the sheep and the wolf, Yeah. I definitely think that everything is twisted today and upside down, with the wolf and the sheep roles in society, but I'm not
I remember going I remember going
What do I need toilet paper
for? I remember going into Asda. So
it shows you how...
I remember going into Asda, like before Pesach, and it was like walking into the apocalypse, There was nobody packing shelves. Yeah. They just had crates of stuff, You had to, pull through. There was no soaps. Mm-hmm. The shelves where people just, before we were walking around with all these masks, I thought, oh my God, I'm in the apocalypse. Nobody was touching each other. Everyone had all the unique masks. Do you remember that?
I was not part of it.
I mean, I wore this mask also, and I was in there, and I had my gloves, and I was like looking at this. I was like, it was just so funny. It's like, do you have any soap? And the one guy's like, look at that pellet. And I had to like pull out coffee and then I got to soap. And then it was nuts. I couldn't believe it. I thought, this is the apocalypse.
Yeah, I bought only food.
I actually laughed about it. It was so funny.
I was very, very quickly, I realized that something.
You could have stolen so much stuff over there if you wanted. So you could have stolen stuff because nobody was really pretty. Because everybody else was scared.
Yeah, it's a state of anarchy, but it shows you how easily controlled people are. And that's what I'm saying. It's very, very dangerous. That's what bothers me more than other things. That actually you can get used to routines that you should not get used to, as a person with basic freedoms.
Yeah.
I mean,
the question is who takes what the freedoms are. That's a different thing.
That's another.
That's when you have to sit and debate on a podcast to realize what is real freedom and what are the freedoms we want to not.
I don't know. We should do it at certain point. not necessarily right now, but
it's so funny how Mike Tyson has taken us to COVID.
It's usually like that. We're just going we are starting with branches of a tree and a stream of consciousness maybe, but he's an incredible individual that like I told you, I just feel a bit sorry that it's difficult for him to express himself. But you can see it if he's in the right environment, the circumstances. You can see. This is why we should maybe get him at certain points. Talk with him. I just would love to speak with him about boxing, the history of boxing.
Yeah, I think.
Great analyst as well, by the way. Great analyst. He is a guy. You see, that's the thing. If you listen to a lot of the new generation of boxers, and this is not me trying to be against them or anything. There are some new boxers. I really like them. I think they are good for the sport. There is another big fight coming in April. Gervonta Davis against Ryan Garcia. Young people. Gervonta Davis is Floyd Mayweather fighter. Okay. He's under Floyd Mayweather against Ryan Garcia. Two young guys talk tons of trash to each other, but really good for the sport. I like them. I wish them the best. Honestly, I don't know. Whoever is going to win this fight, I'll be happy. For him and also for the loser. And what I'm trying to say, but not talking about them specifically, but there is not the same level of knowledge when you compare them with Tyson. But you can see that he came from a different school. He is a very talented man, but also he came from the old school. The old school is where the knowledge is. That's the truth. You see, today there are some good trainers, good boxing teachers, and I had a chance to see some interviews with them. And I know one in Israel as well. His name is Jacob. That's the scholar Jacob. Very, very intelligent man when it comes to boxing. Very educated. But in general, you don't have teachers. So because of that,
the question is: do you need, besides for the skill side, is it so important to have the knowledge?
Well, you know something, because I'll tell you exactly what D'Amato said about it. He told Mike Tyson and his other fighters, he told them 25% of boxing is the skill, 75% is the mental attitude. So that shows you so much, how much you have to learn.
Wow.
75%. This is from D'Amato, it's not from me. And I understand what he was talking about. And I think that the downfall of Tyson, if anything, was because this mental part, when it comes broke down. Yes.
Larry King. Was not Larry King, what's his name? Don King.
That's okay. But that's actually it manifested itself when he lost to Buster Douglas. Yeah. That's where he's actually lost his title to someone he was supposed to smash. I don't know, like there was no, you remember this fight? It was, I think.
Was that the one that he said I was ill or something? You remember we did that interview? They asked him, and he was like, I was not feeling well. I've been ill.
I don't know. I don't remember this one specifically. I think that Tyson gave a zillion interviews, so I watched so many of them. What happened in this fight was that first it was in Tokyo, Japan. It shows you how low key it was supposed to be because no one cared about it much. I mean, okay, it's Tyson. He's the biggest superstar of boxing and one of the most famous athletes in the world. Highest paid at that stage. Incredible personality for popular culture as well. And yet it was in Tokyo. So it means that no one really cared about that fight. He said, he's just fighting cherry-picked or whatever, just a lamb to the slaughter. Type of opponent. Who cares? But look what happened. One of the greatest upsets in boxing history. But then at the same time, was it really an upset? If you think about what happened with Mike Tyson, maybe it was not really an upset. You see, he
wasn't prepared mentally.
He was not prepared mentally, in my opinion. But also, if you look at his corner, if you saw what happened there, his seconds there looked so unready and unprepared. They didn't even have the answer. You know this.
Yes.
The mental piece. You remember that they used bags filled with ice water.
Yeah.
To take the swelling down.
Yeah.
How can you do something like that?
They never had those?
No, they didn't have an answer. They needed to improvise while fighting.
Because they thought he would just knock out.
Yeah, they were just looking at it like, this is Mike Tyson. He's just going to break the guy to pieces on the first or second round. That's it. We'll go home to party. We'll go to party somewhere. And how can you even do something like that? That you come so unprepared. It's so unusual on that level of boxing. That was a title fight. That he put his titles on the line. And Buster Douglas took the titles from him. So now he had nothing. He had no titles, and the titles were taken by Evander Holyfield, a great fighter. Of course,
fighter.
Yeah, he was. For me personally, Evander Holyfield is the last great heavyweight.
Not so intelligent, but a great
fighter.
No, I don't think Evander Holyfield.
No, I don't compare him with Tyson when it comes to what Tyson knows about boxing history. I think it's very.
But
unique.
he's a great boxer.
Oh yeah,
Lennox Lewis was also damn good.
No, I'm not. Yes, definitely. But Evander Holyfield had something very old school about him that I love. And
he knew how to take. First of all, he knew how to take a punch. He got punched by Mike Tyson, which anybody else would have been knocked out. I watched the fight.
Yeah, there were two. You're talking about before
the eating.
Before the eating of the ear eating.
Yeah. But they're good friends now. Him and
Evander. He should be. Why not? But the greatest punch that he has taken, Evander Holyfield, he was interviewed by Charlie Rose, I believe, and he said that the greatest punch he has taken, and I absolutely believe him, was from George Foreman. He fought an old George Foreman,
Who?
Holyfield.
Holyfield.
Because the George Foreman made a comeback. and he's the oldest heavyweight
Yeah,
champion in history.
yes, I remember.
45 years old. 94 May, he took the title.
He took the title.
Yeah, he's the oldest. But so he fought Evander Holyfield, and Holyfield said,
I can't believe. I'm sorry. I'm just going back to the 1960s with Muhammad Ali when he rumbled in the jungle when he fought.
That was 70.
70s. Where he fought.
74.
Yeah.
Foreman.
Yeah. A young Foreman.
Yes.
Who was damn good.
24 years old.
And you watch that fight.
Beast.
I can't believe. In a way, okay, he had all the flair. I saw him. Saw the fight many times. He had all the flair, Ali, but I just thought if he just would have connected one, Ali would be dead. But he just couldn't connect. You know, Ali was dancing around like a so. You know what I mean? He just couldn't. You know, Foreman. Once he hits you once,
I watched that fight many times.
With that brick of a hand, you're dead, right? You're out.
He used to throw his huge swings, but he knew how to fight. He was a great boxer.
Yeah, but he wasn't. But he was also. He was also moving around much. But I couldn't. In a way, if you had to ask me who would win that fight before the fight, I would have said Foreman.
No, I don't. I think that very few gave Ali a chance in that fight. It was but Ali, he showed something. That's the reason why I admire him so much. I told you, Joe Louis is the greatest heavyweight fighter ever for me, and also probably his personality. I really love his contribution, even though it was low key and he was not a talker or anything like that. But Ali, before that fight, he was interviewed by Howard Cosell. And they had very, very funny dynamics between them. They used to throw jabs at each other, So Howard Cosell said something like, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm saying it as it was, It's just don't remember. You cannot quote it word for word. But he said something like, I always believe in Ali. Ali can do incredible things. He can upset the odds. But now I just cannot see how can he do it against someone like Foreman, so young, so strong, so good. How can Ali do something? And then he said, all Ali has is a prayer. That's it. He can only pray for God because when it comes to actually this reality, the world of physical existence, he got no chance. So Ali answered him in this very typical
Ali fashion.
Yeah, Ali fashion of the times. So he said to him, "All I need is a prayer, chump." That's
all. What?
All I need is a prayer, chump. I don't need more than a prayer.
That's all it is.
And he said with the prayer, look what it's great. The relationship of the man with God. He said, a mountain will fall if I'll pray to God. I will. So what is Foreman? And after the fight, he also said Foreman was because of God. Foreman looked to me like a baby. I fight a baby. I don't fight the beast. This is so unusual to see something like that in popular culture. Think about it.
Yes. If you think about it, most of the fighters are religious. I don't know. I mean, at the moment, you have Usyk, who's a heavy Christian. You have Tyson Fury, very religious Christian. Yeah. Muhammad Ali, he says is not Muhammad Ali. I mean Mike Tyson. He says he's Islam. He says he's a Muslim.
He converted at certain point.
He claims he's a Muslim. I don't know. There's something about fighting and being vulnerable that makes you more susceptible to being religious. I don't know what it is.
I mean,
it's very interesting, no?
I think Ali, yes, but Ali was very unique because for him it was a central theme. Because what happens, let me tell you, a lot of press conferences are opening when the fighters are speaking their minds. Not just the fighters, the trainers. They usually say, first, I want to thank God. So you can see you have to remember many people who come from who are fighters, who became big fighters, came from very humble background. Mike Tyson mentioned it again in that podcast with Benavidez. He said, he said something like, I remember, when you're middle class, you don't have it in you. You can be. There are examples of people who came from fairly comfortable lives and still became great champions, but most of them are not. So usually people who come from humble background and not necessarily educated background tend to be believers, which is incredible just to say it, because look at all these books. All of them are holy books. Mm-hmm. There's so much knowledge, but it's beautiful to see the faith of people that they actually believe, even though they don't necessarily have the education. just to mention one thing, Ali was not necessarily coming from difficult background. His father was a painter. He was a sign painter. And he in Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky. So he had a good job. He was okay. He didn't come from a difficult background, but his difficulty was with his ethnicity,
Yes.
with his color.
Yes.
So it was not
Because
necessarily
it was at the time of, what do they call it in America? With
Jim Crow, but
yeah, like that, the 60s, the 70s, and all that. It was, they were, the black people were fighting for their, whatever, freedoms.
it's that was Ali's fight really. That was very important for him because he didn't come from when it comes to background for this class, whatever you want to call it, social class, or so it's more a financial strength. He came from a place where they were not poor people, but he fought for his
Civil
people.
rights.
He fought for his people. He fought for his for the black people in America, and also Islam was very important.
I think he had a connection, quite a solid connection with Malcolm X.
I've heard about it. I don't know much about that particular relationship. I know about Nation of Islam, of course, that he was under Elijah Muhammad, and Herbert Muhammad was his manager, if I remember correctly, that he was the son of Elijah Muhammad. So he was part of the Nation of Islam. Ali, he said when he beat George Foreman, and again, that was probably his greatest moment, but it's hard to say because he had so many great moments. Thriller in Manila, and long before that as well, Sonny Liston beating the monster of the day, Sonny Liston. But Ali said that they asked him, is the greatest moment of your life? So he said something, no, the greatest moment of his life is when I met Elijah Muhammad. That's what he said. It was so good. Look, it's good. I'm not a Muslim, I'm a Jew, you are a Jew, and I'm telling you, I love how devoted the man was. Because he sits there, you have to understand, and I'll show you this clip at a certain point. He sits in the middle of this press conference that is absolute chaos. This is in Zaire, after he beat someone he should not have beaten. George Foreman was never stopped, not at the first part of his career, not when he had him. Even after when he made a comeback and he was an old man and took the title at 45, no one managed to stop him. That's a monster, George Foreman. Ali stopped him. So Ali is sitting there and there is such a chaos around him and people try to drag him down into all these earthly ideas, and he's constantly going up, elevating the conversation to God. Constantly speaking about God. He said, no, all the Muslims, they should go and listen to this, go and pray in the mosque, or should listen to Muslim. I told people in Muslim radio stations that I'm going to upset the odds, and he was very devoted.
I mean, to use his platform to encourage people more to get connected to their own religion, which we could learn a big lesson from ourselves as Jews.
Of course.
And if we have the platform, whatever the platform is, where we're successful in another thing, we should use it rather to kind of get our people to be more devoted, rather than use our platform for just patting ourselves on the shoulder. Look how great I am.
Absolutely. No, it's fantastic that he managed to keep it. Look, again, he spent 8 rounds with George Foreman, and he managed to keep himself so focused on this. That shows how deep it was in him. And I always respected it with Ali. Really, this is one thing that he was. I used to say that there is something about him incredible. That not everything he has done, I agree with. There are certain things I didn't like about his behavior, especially when it comes to fighting Joe Frazier. That was really bad, my God. Especially leading to.
They fought 3 times, no?
3 times, yes.
What he won all 3?
No, he lost the first one. Ali lost the first one. He was not stopped, but he lost the first one, and then he came back. That was a shocking loss for him. But Joe Frazier was such a great fighter, and he was such a soulful individual.
Yeah. But they loved each other, Joe and Ali.
I doubt it.
In the end of their life, I promise you, I watched this thing and they really connected. You know.
I hope that they did. I saw some videos of them together, and I always wanted to.
Yes, I know there wasn't there like the bus story. You know,
what bus?
When he was walking down the street and Joe Frazier came down, or Ali came down with the bus. I can't remember.
I don't know.
There was a punch out in the street.
You mean when they were young?
Yeah. When they were boxing.
They had a fight in one of the studios when they got interviewed.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Ali got up and whacked him in the face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can watch. I think that he was taunting him. Ali was terrible when it came to these things. I mean, he always
psychological.
He used to mess his opponents. But Frazier, you see, Frazier was not. I don't think that it really worked psychologically on Frazier, but he got very upset, and rightfully so. Because look, Ali said about him things which, especially I think, leading to Thriller in Manila, they were extremely abusive. There's a certain point, that I think, with all due respect to trash talk, to promoting a fight, that you can live without. But I also think that Ali was so scared that he behaved like that. That was his mechanism, defense mechanism. I believe that Ali, the thing about him was that he was very scared, but for him, fighting was dealing with his fears. He's a man who had lots of fears in him, but he had to face his fears. So this I really respect about him. He constantly went in order to face his fears, but he was afraid of Frazier. And he said things that he should not have said, as far as I'm concerned. And apparently Marvis Frazier, if you remember, he fought Mike Tyson, the son of Joe Frazier. Mike Tyson stopped him in a round or something like that. When he was a kid, he said that because of Ali's comments, they had threats on their lives.
Did they?
Yes, because from all kind of groups of people that accused Joe Frazier of being this or being that, or not representing his race in a respectful way. It's not good. It was not good. It was really, I think, a dark
period.
It was not good to see something like that happening, to hear them. But they had tremendous fight between them at Thriller in Manila, and it was stopped by Eddie Fudge, who was one of the greatest trainers of boxing. Teachers, I would prefer to call him, and he stopped the fight because he was afraid that Joe Frazier is going to have irreversible damage to his eye if he continue. But what a fight they fought between them.
Which fight was that?
Third one. And when it was announced that that's it, it's a technical stoppage or the fight is finished, I think it was 13th round. So Ali just collapsed, and he said something that was a near-death experience fighting this man. Yes. He just said it as it is. And I read somewhere that after that great fight, there was a party and everyone were invited. That was in the Philippines. So they said that Frazier was Frazier was dancing, singing, because he used to sing. He had a band, Frazier. He used to be a singer. It's for fun. So Frazier, after that, he was singing and dancing, and Ali came to that party and he was a wreck. Physical wreck, He was the winner, but he was broken. Finished.
There was Frazier dancing on the stage.
Yes, Frazier was such a tough guy. Ali was very tough as well, of course, very durable. But his toughness was mental toughness, spiritual toughness. Ali. Yeah, no, Frazier was a soulful. I always think about him as a very soulful fighter. He had something very soulful about him. He was so dangerous as well. Never seen anything like that. And every way that throws so many punches and does it so well. Rhythmic fighter. Very exciting to watch.
Amazing.
Yeah. So that's it. So Ali was pretty broken, but he was the winner.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So yes, there's a fight coming next week.
Yeah, I'm probably going to watch it, I think.
Really? You like staying late, huh? I won't be able to survive.
It depends what time it is. Like if it's 10:30.
Maybe 4 o'clock in the morning, I think.
I don't know if I'll be able to watch it. 4 o'clock in the morning.
I think so, yes.
If
it's happening 10 o'clock in the States, so what do you think? 10 or 11 maybe.
Why are they doing that?
Because they're fighting in the States, so they're fighting around 10. There are a lot of fights coming between them.
No.
Before, I mean.
So much better when they're fighting like Dubai or in Saudi Arabia, and everybody gets to watch it.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen in Dubai. That's not a fight for Dubai.
Not a fight for Dubai.
That's an American fight. It's two American fighters. Benavidez is American. He was born in the United States, but he's half Mexican, half Ecuadorian. So it's good. He brings this Mexican. That Mexican.
Mexican and what's it called? The best fighters. One of the best fighters.
Oh, I love the Cubans. Oh, wow. Well, it's different schools, but very different.
What, Mexico and Cuba?
Very different. Yes, it's a.
I just watched a documentary about the Cubans. Unfortunately, because of the situation that they were in, they weren't given so many opportunities. But if they were really unleashed on the world, it would probably be a different history at the moment.
In general, you say, or when it comes to boxing, definitely.
Probably boxing, because they weren't allowed to. They were communists or whatever. They were refused. There's a possibility.
It's very interesting because
It's like funny. How can you call yourself the champion of the world when you haven't actually faced the whole world? Because some of the world cannot compete.
it's true, but this is but it just shows you that these titles they mean something.
Like the Americans got the World Series and then anyone playing baseball.
It's very true because it shows you that this.
I'll tell you something interesting. Sorry, I'm just
No.
I'll tell you something interesting that because you. So I was listening to this. I was listening to a lecture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a certain discourse. There's a certain discourse I was studying, and I was listening to this certain rabbi giving this talk, and he says something very, very interesting. He says that there once was a competition of who is the best composer in the world, right? They had a competition, right? And everybody was entering, except the real best composer. He never entered.
Okay.
You know? So they didn't understand. You know, the date was coming and he hadn't yet put his name down. You know, he was like known as the Ali or the Tyson, of composers. So they got hold of him and said to him, why didn't you put your name in a competition? So he says, because I'm the best in the world.
Yeah, already. Yeah, that's all. It's Ali. I told you I'm the greatest of all time.
I don't have to compete. Once I start competing, it's doubtful. It's you have the possibility that I'm not the best in the world.
Yeah,
it's like there is a point where you are the best because you just are the best, and it doesn't make a difference about anything else and any outside or influences and any it just is the reality. This is the reality, which I found very, very interesting. And he was bringing that in order to explain just he was bringing that as from a quarter to explain us as Jews in the world, and how we are we are who we are with like it's basically about free choice, about comparing free choice with free choice, but it is because it is, not because there's any outside thing
absolutely.
dictated.
I agree with
which
you.
Which is I find very, very phenomenal.
I don't look certain things you need competitions, but it's very interesting what you're saying. When it comes to music, it's a bit different than sports or boxing. When you are holding a title that tells you today, the titles are today it's even closer to what you are suggesting here because you got so many belts, too many belts in boxing, so you can have few champions at the same weight class. It doesn't mean anything to me. It's very strange. You have to have one undisputed. You got the undisputed concept, which means that someone holds all the belts. But why do you even have to get to the undisputed? You just have to have one belt, or even two belts. Let's just say that's it. Finish there, not five.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous because it creates so many champions of the world. Who is really the champion of the world? If you got four champions,
or Tyson,
yeah. That's example. But I think in welterweight, 147, which is 147 pounds, which was probably the most popular weight class because of Floyd Mayweather. And before Floyd Mayweather, by the way, Ray Leonard, Sugar Ray Leonard. You remember him from the 80s. Great fighter, great fighter, very intelligent man. So he was fighting. He was an Olympic gold medalist. They call him the Golden Boy. He's the original Golden Boy. You see, let me just say, when Ali was already a sick man, unfortunately, he started showing signs of his Alzheimer, Parkinson's. You can call it any irreversible brain damage. So he was just in his 30s, maybe late 30s.
Ali?
Yes, he kept on fighting despite showing the signs.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yes, that's unfortunate. He had a personal GP by the name of Freddy Pacheco.
Yeah. Jewish
man, I think maybe Hungarian, from Hungarian origin, but he was born in this, I don't know. Anyway, but and he was warning Ali. He said to him, "You have to stop. You have to stop. You have to stop with this fight." But he continued. But coming back to the point, when Ali retired, it was around, let's say, there was such a void. Who can take the shoes of someone like that? So you had Larry Holmes coming after him, who was a very good fighter but didn't have the charisma. So they had to go to the lower classes of weight classes, and then came Sugar Ray Leonard, 147-pound fighter who could actually give this Ali vibes and energies to the people. And this is where welterweight became such a big weight class to make a lot of money with. And Floyd Mayweather in recent years, and Manny Pacquiao as well. Of course, you remember Manny Pacquiao from the Philippines. Is the greatest fighter to come from the Philippines. There are a lot of great fighters, by the way. It's not just him, but he is probably the most famous, and rightfully so. So this became a class where you have the big money. So coming back to the story you talk about, so I think in welterweight there was a certain point not long ago there were like four different champions.
Interesting.
4 different champions of the world. But you see it, they just make money with these belts.
Yeah, because it's probably different.
The sanctioning bodies and
organizations and sponsors and things.
But I'm absolutely up for the idea of that a champion need to be undisputed. But coming back to your point about Cuba, when Ali was active and during the 70s, and he was at his very best, you can say. I mean, there was a man by the name of Teofilo Stevenson. Have you heard the name? Cuban. And he was taller than Ali, and he had a knockout punch that Ali didn't have. Ali could knock out people, but he was not a puncher. And he had great technique, and he was 3-time gold medalist. So this man was unique.
Really good.
And he was offered to fight Ali.
And he took it?
No.
Why?
Because that would have been a great fight, I believe, but he could not, because he said, look, if I take this fight, so I have to leave Cuba. You have to defect and just leave Cuba forever.
Oh, yeah.
And so he said it's that versus the people and the Cuban idea. So I prefer not to. Look, he died a miserable man, apparently. Very sad
because
story.
he must have had regret.
I'm sure he will regret
Could
it.
have been the champion of the world.
Maybe, yes. You see. Yes, sir.
No, I'm just saying, it's such a shame. Politics gets involved in sport.
It is, but it's very much about the fundamental idea that according to the Cuban ideology, communist ideology, you should not make showbiz out of fighting. That should be a bit more of a noble activity where you actually go fight as an amateur in the Olympics, take a gold medal. That's the pinnacle of your activity, and that's it. You shouldn't make a showbiz out of it. You can see the point as well. I definitely don't like communism. But you can see where they are coming from. For them, it's...
Yeah, but the Russians, they fought, no?
There was a lot of problems, I think, for people who came from they were under the communist sphere, there was a problem. You had something like Laszlo Papp, an Hungarian fighter, 3 times gold medalist. You see, during the history of Olympic boxing, there are 3 people who took 3 times the gold medal. Teofilo Stevenson, Felix Savon, both Cubans, heavyweights.
Yeah, they dominated.
Yeah. Savon was in the times of Tyson. It's another guy that could have fought Tyson. And then you had Laszlo Papp, the Hungarian. Papp, I believe that he had certain provisions. They allowed him to go sometimes outside and fight outside the communist against sphere. Yeah, but he never managed to get a title. It was very complicated for him to do it as a professional. They awarded him a title later on, just because of his greatness as a fighter, but he never had the chance to really do it correctly as a professional. If you want to go, you can understand the point. But Ali would have had a very strong fights in his hands. But then who knows, because Felix Savon fights 3 rounds. This is an amateur, and then Ali was a 15-round fighter.
It's very hard to fight 15 rounds.
Yeah, today you fight 12.
12, whatever. Even 12, even 10.
Of course.
It's very difficult.
Let's think about the old school when people fought 15 rounds. What a fight was there?
They were way more fitter than nowadays.
They're different. I told you, it's a different breed. Really, they were tougher, mentally stronger as well, and they had great teachers. Today the guys are bigger. They got sports science more advanced
it's
sport
true.
science. They are bigger
More
physically,
access to gyms.
but that doesn't mean anything in boxing. Not, I mean, at certain level, it doesn't mean much. That's why I'm telling you that the old school is the.
Listen, I appreciate all styles. I think the boxing of today will be the old school of tomorrow.
I understand where you're coming from, but again, I think that if you compare it to what used to be the standard back in the day, there's a big difference. If you go and study
Interesting.
the past, there are still good fighters today. There are still some fighters that are really good, that are good fighters. Could have failed maybe in the old school, but it was savage back then. Trust me. I mean, you had to fight very often, and you had to fight 15 rounders as well.
Yeah.
And you had very few titles. It's not like today. It's easier to become. It's never easy, but it's easier to become.
The road to become world champions.
Yeah, relatively speaking,
Interesting.
It's much easier.
Yeah, it's quite cool. Yeah. I don't know. I like watching. I mainly watch if you want to call it the heavyweights and stuff. All the other ones I probably watch like a highlight or something,
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense watching two people smash each other in the head and enjoying it.
Really, I look at it as it's something I hear quite often, but I look at it as an art form.
It's definitely an art form.
Yeah, there is violence to it as well.
But you can watch each side psychologically, team the other one up.
Yeah.
You can see it. You can see it, and the strategy that each one is trying to put on the other one is really good to watch.
It's fantastic. It's a fantastic when it's really good. High level boxing is beautiful. It's jazz. I love jazz music. It's very similar when it comes from the right places, right times.
It's interesting you say it's jazz.
It is because the cultures as well that contributed to jazz music at its peak, let's say 40s, 50s. Also, boxing was at is its greatest place as far as I'm concerned through the, let's say, late 30s, 40s, maybe into the 50s. Mm-hmm. This is where you had Joe Louis and you had Henry Armstrong and then Sugar Ray Robinson, who is probably the greatest fighter ever. And he was operating around the 40s.
Mm.
That was probably the greatest time.
Did they have gloves then now?
Of course.
When did the gloves come in, you said?
Late 19th century.
Late 19th century, right.
Yeah.
Bare knuckles, no?
Before the bare knuckles, yes. But the thing is that gloves, of course, you understand why they started using gloves. It's not to protect your heads, it's to protect your hands. Because the gloves, effectively, they actually they are more damaging when you think about it. Because if you get constantly punched with a glove in your head, there is better chances that you will get a concussion or irreversible brain damage. Mm-hmm. But the point was that before that, when it was bare knuckle fighting, the hands of the fighters used to get so bruised after several rounds. So they said, what now? It became wrestling match. Mm-hmm. You would see pictures, you would see drawings of fighters back then, and they're stolding, grabbing each other and throwing each other. So it was not...
I see.
It was not boxing. There was no strategy. There was no sweet science as we know it today to that. It was a lot of... It's interesting. Look, bare knuckles is still very interesting activity to watch. You think about it, just fighting with your knuckles, and it requires different techniques as well. Because probably hitting more to the body than to the head, because there is more chance you're going to break your knuckles if you are punching someone in the head. But that's it. It's they had to change it, and that made it a strategic sport, an artistic sport. But there are dangers to boxing. Look, anyone, I spoke about it in the past, and I'm not a fighter. I spoke with some fighters, and look, anyone who goes to the ring and not realizing the dangers of the ring, you should not think about it too much, but you should be aware that you are going into as a professional fighter. I'm not talking about amateur fighters. Amateurs, usually, if someone gets hurt, the referee is going to stop the fight. It's not about hurting each other.
Right. It's more skill.
It's more skill, yes. But if you fight professionally, you have to realize that someone can hurt very badly. You can get hurt very badly. You can die, and the other man can as well.
Yeah. That's why I don't go into the ring. That's why I watch.
Yeah, exactly. Sugar Ray Robinson killed someone in the ring, by the way.
Yeah, you mentioned what's good last week. What's the kill?
Max Bell.
Yeah, he also killed someone.
It happens, yeah. It's very tragic that it happens.
Yeah.
But you know something, I tell you something that will be interesting to you, and you tell me what you think about it. That now I call the rabbi in you. I mean, I always do, but anyway, this is specifically. Sugar Ray Robinson, before he fought Jimmy Doyle, whom he killed, unfortunately, they say that he wanted to cancel the fight before the fight was scheduled to happen. And he had the reputation of a diva back then. You know why? Because he was such a great fighter, and he knew he's a great fighter. Rightfully so. He wanted to get as much as he could from the promoters, from the managers, and he said, you know, so he used to sometimes, if he's not happy with the conditions, he would say, I don't want to fight.
You mean the contract?
Or just the condition of the situation. Let's say he can come one day before the fight. I'm not happy with this. I'm not happy with that. Negotiating to the last minute. Good. But in that case, he came and he said, look, I had a dream that he had a dream that he's killing Jimmy Doyle. So he said, I don't want to fight this fight. That's a true story, by the way. Legitimist historians like the late Bert Sugar used to speak a lot about it. He was a great historian, by the way, of boxing. And Sugar Ray Robinson said, I don't want to fight. Because of the dream that I had. I'm too scared killing this man. They tried to convince him it's just a dream. Eventually, you know what they did? They brought a priest. They said, okay, it's a man of God. Yeah. Or at least he shows himself like he's a man of God. He got the uniform. Unfortunately, that's the situation with some of the types. And he came to Robinson and he told him, it's just a dream, don't worry about it. And he went into the ring and he killed Jimmy Doyle.
Wow. It reminds me of a story that's written in the Talmud.
That's why I wanted to get you off.
No, so I heard this, first time I heard the story was, so I heard this from, I can't remember, I was listening also to a lecture and I heard the story one way. And then I was in shul, in synagogue, and I opened up a Gemara, one of these Talmuds, and it was discussing about dreams. And there was a commentary at the bottom, and I read the story, and it was totally different to the original way I heard it. So I've told both, because the one I'm going to tell you now is, it was told at a lecture, but it's not true. Meaning it's not what it says, which I read. So I'll tell you. Before we do that, we know that during the priestly blessings, when the priest used to bless, we say something very interesting. That if I have it here in English, I'll show you. It's a very interesting prayer. So while the priest is busy blessing us, saying the last couple of words, listen to this. It's actually quite amazing. So we stand up. You know the famous Yivarechecha, Hashem v'yishmerecha. You know all that.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just find the place quickly. So as they're saying a certain point, now remember they're all standing in the base, in the temple. Thousands and thousands of people are standing in the temple. Okay, and they are busy, and they've got all their taluses over their head. And you would think, like, what prayer out of all prayers should you be meditating on? Right? So it says, so what happens? Comes the priests are busy blessing everybody, and what they're saying, the Lord bless you and guard you, right? Mm-hmm. The Lord make his countenance shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turns his countenance towards you and grant you peace. These are big blessings, you know. And what do we say as the community? Master of the universe, I am yours and my dreams are yours. I have dreamt a dream and I don't know what it is. May it be your will, Lord my God and God of my fathers, that all my dreams concerning myself and concerning anyone of Israel shall be for good. Whether dreams that I dreamed about others, or whether I dreamed about myself, or whether others dreamed about me. Mm-hmm. If they are good dreams, strengthen and reinforce them, and may they be fulfilled in me and in them, like the dreams of Joseph the righteous. Right? But if they require a remedy, heal them like King Chizkiyahu of Judah from his illness, or like Miriam the prophetess from leprosy, like Naaman from leprosy, like the waters of Merah by Moses, and like the waters of Jericho by Elisha. As you change the curse of the wicked, and as you've changed the curse of the wicked Bilam for a curse to a blessing, so shall you change my dreams concerning myself and concerning all Israel to good. How incredible is that prayer? Out of all prayers that you can think about, standing in the temple while they're blessing you about God should turn towards you, give you gracious and everything, you're talking about dreams and changing dreams. So now you ask the question, what is Jewish perspective of dreams? So from this, it's very clear. You can probably say that, we should take them very seriously.
Yes. It seems like.
But there's a very interesting discussion in the Talmud about Abaye and Rava. These are two famous rabbis that existed in the Talmud, and they always used to argue with each other. They were both students of a rabbi called Rabbah. Yeah, Rabbah means great. Yeah, two students, Abaye and Rava, and they used to argue. Abaye said left, and Rava said right. You can't open up a page of this Gemara without finding Abaye Rava. If I open up down, I'll show you. They argue and it's funny because they had one teacher that taught them the same thing. So it's possible that you can hear a message from a teacher, and each of us understand a different perspective, which is quite incredible. And they used to have dreams also, yeah, and they used to go to the dream. Like Joseph, they used to the dream interpreter.
Okay.
And what happened was this interpreter liked Abaye, didn't really like Rava so much. Didn't really like him so much for whatever reason. And he used to, when Abaye used to come to him and tell him all about his dreams, what does it mean? He used to tell him, it means you're going to be rich and respectful, And when Rava used to come with the dreams, he'd say, you're going to lose all your money in business, like literally whatever, because he didn't like Ravi. He interpreted the dream that it should be, and actually that's how it happened. Each one, whatever the dream, so in that piece, I think it's in that piece, or there's another piece, or it's in another piece, I can't remember, I was busy learning it, and it reminds me of another story. So in that piece, I think Rava eventually finds out that hey, the only reason why he's interpreting my dreams bad because he doesn't like me, so he gets a bit angry about it. But the whole thing is that I think it's all about the dreams can only influence you,
Okay.
if you want them to influence you. You understand? That's the power of dreams. Yeah. So if somebody tells you what the dream means, that's how it will be. Because if that's what you want, you will dictate your life. Your perception will create that reality. It's like there's a story. I don't know if it's true. It's brought as an anecdote or some lesson, where there's a guy standing at the edge of a town. It's famous, like people speak about. And as he's walking, one visitor comes in and says, "Tell me, how is this town?" He said, "It's a town full of thieves. You're just going to hate it." And he goes into the town. The next guy comes past and says, "How's the town?" "Beautiful, lovely people, friendly, they're helpful, you can't believe." Same guy telling two different people. Anyway, 30 days later, they come out. The first guy comes out, "How's it?" "Oh, you can't believe it. Got all my stuff stolen. Got nothing left. You're right, this place is a place of thieves." The next guy comes out, "How was it?" "The best place. I'm moving my whole family. Everybody's lovely and wonderful." You ever heard that anecdote? But I was reading in the Gemara, I was reading in the Talmud on this piece about dreams. I was reading at the bottom. And this is what the two stories. So which is same idea. It's all about perception. It's all about how you create your reality. So the story that I heard was, the first story, which I don't think is true because what I read, is they said that, and it's exactly the same story. It's exactly the same story. Just the endings are different. Is that the first story I heard was about a rabbi in Lithuania. And that's Rabbi in Lithuania, who a guy came to him and said, "I'm having a dream. I'm going to cross over the bridge, and I don't want to cross over the bridge because I had a dream the water's going to come and I'm going to drown, fly over the bridge." And the rabbi said, "We don't give dreams credence in Judaism."
Okay.
And he came back the next day. I had the same dream. I'm walking down the bridge and the water came. The rabbi's like, "We don't give it credence." It happened the third time. He says, "Rabbi," the rabbi said, "Listen, I told you in Jewish law, we don't give dreams any credence." Right? What happened was, the guy walked over the bridge and a wave came and killed him. Yeah? So his students came up to him and says, what's going on? Well, you said he gave the dream the power.
Credence. That's right.
That's what it was. Yeah. But when I was reading in the Gemara, the actual story, it's exactly the same story word to word. I was reading it. It's not inside the Gemara itself. It's one of the explanations at the bottom. One of the rabbis who write about dreams and everything. And the story ends differently. He writes, the students came to him and said that the wave and killed him. So he said, oh wow, there must be power to dreams. So it's two different stories. One saying on the rabbi, maybe there is power to dreams. The other one saying, but the one that I read, I think is probably true. That actually. So, but it doesn't take from the fact that from a Jewish perspective, definitely nowadays, dreams are, there's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch that if you have a bad dream,
it's the spiritual law.
There's a halacha in the how we should live our days. If you have a very bad dream, you should give charity.
Okay.
Yeah, there is this concept, but I think the central point is that if you give credence to dreams, that will dictate your reality.
Okay. No, I understand the point. Okay.
And I want to give one last thing.
No, please continue.
One last thing, which is a joke.
Okay, as much as you want, just go for it.
It was a joke. It's a very good joke. Before that, also, some people say if you have dreams about the righteous, like tzaddikim and rebbes and that, then it's more like related. It's like real. So if you have a dream about the rebbe, there's many stories about having a dream about righteous people. Our rebbes had dreams about their rebbes. But another thing that's brought about is that you open up a big rabbit hole here. I can go. Another thing is that dreams are also influenced by what you did in the day. So if you thought about the whole day about an elephant going to the eye of the needle, you'll be able to dream about it. Your dreams are usually influenced on your experience from the previous day. That's why you need to be. We don't give, especially nowadays, we don't give so much emphasis on dreams. Like someone says, I had a dream of falling off. Okay, give a few bobs of charity, it's not going to happen.
Does it have to do also with the idea of prophecy? Meaning that if we had more, I don't know again what is the sense about prophecy. I spoke with Mecher maybe about it many years ago about are there any prophets today? So
what did he say?
I'm asking you.
So there's definitely so from what I know is that there was a certain period prophecy stopped, but the Rambam brings it that before Mashiach comes, it's going to come back, and prophecy when the Rambam was talking about, which everybody was like there was numbers and numbers of prophets, so that kind of stopped that it was available to everybody. But we do say that Ruach HaKodesh, which is divine spirit, is that what it's called?
Okay.
Is a form of prophecy. And definitely the Rebbe had, the Rebbe writes in one of his talks that he's saying something as a prophet. So having individual prophets, big rabbis who can actually see, it does exist, but to a very select few. When Mashiach comes, we will probably, Messiah comes. But I just want to say a joke about dreams.
No, of course. So I'll ask you a question after. First, to say your joke.
It was such a funny joke. It's great.
I'm sure you're a funny guy, It's like what? Goodfellas. You're a funny guy. Funny. Funny in what way?
So you may have heard the joke, but it's still a good joke. So you have these two friends, best friends, they've been friends for 80 years. And they've had an argument for 80 years. What happens upstairs when you die? Is it a baseball game or is it a football game? Right?
Okay.
So the one guy says, no, when you go upstairs, you play football. One says, no, you play baseball. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about there. Argue. Anyway, came the day and one of them died.
Okay.
Anyway, a year later, on the year anniversary of the one dying, the other one falls asleep and has a dream of his friend. And his friend comes to him and he says, I'm in heaven. So he says, yes, how's it going there? No, who was right? He says, I'm going to tell you, there's good news and bad news. He says, no, tell me. So he says, the good news is, you were right. The good news is right. We played baseball here. He says, I told you. He says, what's the bad news? You pitching tomorrow night.
He wish he never knew it. Huh? He wish he could never liked baseball that much. Oh my God, it's good. No, I like it. You're a good comedian. I told you before, you're good with the comedy. Now, a question that I wanted to ask you. So, according to your education, with that all your knowledge, and according to your judgment, if you were called before the fight of Ray Robinson, and you would be extremely serious about the fight. Now we know what happened.
Good question.
Now we know what happened, so we got more knowledge than the priest and the other people had back then. But what would you do if you were to be the only spiritual advisor around, and you would have to make a decision if you should support the man in his fear and cancel the fight, or just go?
So I'm going to speak honestly. If you only had
what I want.
If you only had one night and it wasn't 3 nights in a row, I'd say, listen, give charity. It's a bad dream. Do an action of positivity, and it's all about you create your own reality. That's what I tell him, and I'd probably say I'd probably tend to go with the fight. I would.
Okay, understand. No, it's understood, and it's very possible.
Because there's nothing. You can't dictate daily life based on a dream. You can't. I know all the different stories I'll tell you, because at the end of the day, dreams are only what you give it. You give the power. Unless he tells me that some righteous individual came to him, okay, then you have to, from a Jewish perspective, then you got to say, okay,
You know what is interesting about it? I would like to explore it a bit further, because you see, first we already know that it happened. So his dream became reality, but it can be also due to the fact that, due to him being so serious about it and actually believing that he's going to kill the guy. So he went extra hard on that and killed him. And he was a dangerous fighter. Ray Robinson was the perfect fighter. Bert Sugar used to say, the historian, he said, if God created the perfect fighter. So he had everything. He had the power, he could knock out, he had incredible skill, natural ability, fighting mentality, incredible IQ in the ring, durability, everything. So maybe he went extra hard on Jimmy Doyle, not necessarily wanting to do it, but that's what happened according to his philosophy, or let's say subconscious philosophy or idea when he went into the ring. But so what I'm saying, but there is this thing, and there is another thing, because he was so special as a fighter. You would, this is a type of genius that is very rare. It's like Newton, it's like Euler, the mathematician, it's like Maimonides, the Rambam. It's one in so many generations. So you might think to yourself, is it possible that the man was so special that we should have put more emphasis on his dream, because he was so serious about it?
Maybe, but you asked me,
because we're talking about very unusual people. These are not common people. Even if you take the great legends, he was above it.
Yeah, but remember, he was also, the dream was, he knew that he was going to fight him. There was so many background that was pushing him to say, and they probably had this altercation with each other. I'm going to smash you. I'm going to kill you.
I'm not sure about it. The trash talk I told you was not that common back then. You are talking about fighters of the old school, the golden age of boxing, before Ali also came into the scene.
Also, the common, how many people really got killed in the ring?
Oh, it depends. There have been more than few deaths. I had once the statistics of it. There is too many numbers there. I tell you that there was one particular bloody year. I think it was 2017 actually. I believe, or maybe 18, maybe 17. That something like 10 people died.
Yeah, but after how many fights? 1,000 fights?
No, not thousands fights. But that year, on that specific year, you had 10 people who got killed in the ring.
Okay, so that even reinforces. So this information that you sure had, could have influenced what he dreamt about, that he was going to kill. So you can't dictate reality on a dream. You can't.
No, I'm not saying. I'm just asking.
That's why if someone asked me, listen, your living is to fight somebody. This is, you had a dream. It was a bad dream. we have a solution in the code of Jewish law. Give some charity. You
Maybe
know?
if you gave charity, it would have worked differently.
I'm not saying if it would or wouldn't.
I'm
maybe,
not saying. I said
maybe. I don't know. And I don't think I would have dismissed it completely. It's a load of rubbish. Just say, you know, you're the master of your destiny.
Yeah.
You
would
choose.
advise. Yeah, you would advise.
You can decide if Jay, what's his name?
Sugar Ray Robinson.
No, the person who's fighting.
He was the fighter.
Who's the fighter?
Jimmy Doyle. He fought against Jimmy Doyle.
You could say you have the, you know, it's in your hands.
I understand.
But when he walks into the ring, he's in his hand to kill somebody. He's got it. Yeah, I know the other side can be weak, but the other guy's prepared.
You have to fight, and especially back then, but not just back then, today as well. If you are part of professional boxing, you realize that the crowd wants to see knockouts. And especially, and also if you got the power to knock out someone.
No, but I saw a fight once in Ali who was fighting, and he stopped the fight because he saw that if he hits this guy one more time, it's just...
I understand.
You understand?
It happens. No. It happens sometimes.
I saw Tyson Fury also do the same thing. He told the judge, "You better stop the
ref."
fight.
Yeah, the referee. Yeah, they got the judges around.
The ref. He told the ref, "You've got to stop it."
The ring. Yes.
It's just not.
No, it happens. It happens. I've seen.
I never saw the fight, but maybe you see the fight. Also, there was another. There was another guy. I just don't know the names as well as you. There was another fight I watched where the person who was being knocked out got tangled in the ropes. His arm got tangled in the ropes, so he couldn't fall.
Mm-hmm.
But because he never dropped to the ground, the fighter was still punching him in the face, and his gloves were all that. I'm thinking to myself, the ref is good.
You're absolutely right.
The ref can he not see? He can't get down to the ground because his arm is stuck. I don't know where the ref was. He was getting smashed 10, 20 smash. You know, it just was not fair.
It's a bad call by the referee, in my opinion.
Do you remember seeing that fight?
Maybe I did, but I don't remember specifically. But I've seen some bad calls, and I agree with you. Look, the life of the fighters, the health of the fighter, if not his life, but still his health, because he can end up in a coma. It can be damaged for the rest of his life, even if he's going to keep on living, and it happened to some fighters. His life are in the end of his corner, and the referee. So definitely they got to protect him, because fighters usually are not going to do what it takes to protect themselves when it actually comes to quit.
They're not,
to quit
because they're in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
They're in the zone. All they're thinking about smash, knockout. That's what they're thinking about.
So even if they are in a desperate situation,
but that doesn't mean if he had a dream like that, you know, and he was conscious of it, then maybe he should have taken precautions. But I'm not blaming him for anything.
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's
what I'll tell him. If you ask me what I would tell him, I'd say, you know, give charity. No. Dreams are, you make the reality. It's up to you.
Yeah, it's an impossible situation. And no, I agree with you. I'm just talking going into the ring, especially again, but you have to think, you have to be 100%. And that includes the idea that you're going to knock out the opponent if you get a chance.
100%.
And he was a vicious fighter, and he was very good at being a fighter. By the way, he spoke about it later in his career when he was interviewed. Unfortunately for Sugar Ray Robinson, it ended bad as well, like most legendary fighters, because at 52 he had to make a comeback. He retired from boxing. I think he retired at 52, and maybe he had to come back at 55. But he had 3 years break from boxing. He wanted to become an entertainer, a tap dancer, and just a general entertainer. But like many others, he had a lot of issues, financial issues, bad business decisions, and he had to come back to do what he did best, which is fighting. And he spoke about it, and he said, "I hate it. I think it's gladiatorial. It's regressive, primitive activity that people are throwing money on him." But he was such an artist. You see, I accept his view, but I think he was also very upset that he had to do it. And realizing that after so many fights, because when he retired back then, it's not like today that the big fighters fight once or twice a year. He fought 101 fights when he retired, and he was a young man when he retired. Yeah. So there were a lot of fights under his belt, you know. So it's just a shame, really, that
it's definitely. Listen, we can debate it forever. This idea. You know, is it barbaric? Is it not barbaric?
He said barbaric, I think. Yeah, that's the right way. The right word that he used, barbaric. Yeah.
I think there's arguments for both sides, but anyway.
Yeah.
It's just amazing, yeah. Okay.
Okay, yes, that's it.
Shakayach.
ישר כוח. It was good, huh?
Unbelievable.
You're going to leave that comment in? It was good, huh?
No, I'll take it.
Dov, listen, that was a real good